It is the end of an era at Walt Disney World. Muppet Vision 3D closed down for good over the weekend after 34 years there at Hollywood Studios.
Guys, Muppet Vision 3D is officially dead, and there's literally nothing that any of us can do about it.
Welcome to Muppet Vision 3D.
Jim Henson's Muppet Vision 3D.
As you may know, Muppet Vision 3D has officially closed at Walt Disney World in Orlando, Florida as of June 8th, 2025. And as of the day I'm filming this, it's currently June 24th, which means it hasn't even been 20 whole days since the attraction has closed. So this is still quite fresh for me. The attraction first opened on May 16th, 1991 in Disney's Hollywood Studios, exactly 1 year after the death of Jim Henson. For people who are super new to this topic, Jim Henson is the creator of the Muppets. This attraction kind of became a cult classic. It definitely wasn't one of Disney World's most popular rides. I mean, it's kind of hard to compete with huge roller coasters or the spinning teacup ride or something like that. But for anyone who's a fan of the Muppets and was really into it, myself included, Muppet Vision 3D was just such an awesome attraction. I had gone a couple of times in my life, and anytime I'd go, I always beelined it to the little Muppet area in Hollywood Studios. Fun fact, there was plans for a while during the initial creation process of Muppet Vision 3D to also create kind of like a Muppet universe within Hollywood Studios. That got thrown out really fast, but it was always kind of cool to see what it could have been. So, you know, I guess considering my high school grad photos as well, you can say I was a pretty big fan of the Muppets. So as well as the attraction they had at Disney World, some people might not know that there also used to be a Muppet Vision 3D ride at Disneyland, California, which opened February 8th, 2001 and closed November 1st, 2014. You know, it didn't really last very long. It was like 13 years. It kind of opened and then it closed and it wasn't a big thing. But the official closing of this ride really sucks. And lots of people online have expressed how upset they are about it. As a huge Muppet Vision 3D fan, I kind of saw this coming. I'm honestly surprised this didn't happen 10 years ago. I knew, you know, eventually this attraction, which is looking quite dated now, was going to close. But, you know, it's still a hard pill to swallow sometimes. So not only are people just upset about the actual ride closing, which at this point most people were probably expecting, but Muppet Vision 3D also has a lot of historical significance. And to really understand the importance of Muppet Vision 3D, I think we need to just start from the beginning. Jim Henson, born in 1936, began his career working as a puppeteer for a local television station called WRC-TV, which was a NBC affiliate channel located in Washington, D.C. So the show he worked on at that station was called Sam and Friends, and it was there that he started to develop some early versions of the Muppet characters, Kermit being the puppet he most often used in the program. And you can really tell from looking at these old episodes where the blueprint for what we now know as the modern day Muppets comes from, as well as how he started developing his own personal puppeteering style, which was known for being quite loud and character driven. Jim Henson worked at Sam and Friends until 1961, where he eventually moved into public television, where he created numerous original characters for PBS's Sesame Street.
Sunny day, sleeping up, clouds away.
Sesame Street was an immediate success, and within its first year was being watched by over 2 million American households every single day. It received critical praise, it won multiple Emmy Awards, and was so successful that by 1971 they had launched Sesame Street Mexico and Sesame Street Germany to reach international audiences. By the 1970s, Jim Henson's original creation, The Muppets, also started rapidly growing in popularity. They appeared in numerous commercials and TV slots, then landing what was supposed to be a continuous role on a new little NBC show called Saturday Saturday Night Live. Yeah, you heard that right. In the first season of Saturday Night Live, which aired during the 1975-1976 season, Jim Henson's Muppets were slated to have a reoccurring segment on the show. So the Muppet segment was called The Land of Gorch, and it was more aimed at a adult audience and was quite a bit different than what people were used to with Jim Henson, considering how childish and silly Sesame Street was. You know, so it's no surprise that these segments ended up just doing so bad. The writers of SNL hated writing for puppets, and it didn't really seem like Jim Henson was all that passionate about doing SNL either. So after one season of that experiment, the Muppets disappeared from SNL and television forever. That is until 1 year later in 1976 when The Muppet Show premiered. The Muppet Show ran for 5 seasons and was also extremely popular. It was essentially a variety show hosted by a new celebrity every week. It featured the Muppets doing different sketches with the celebrity. It also featured different musical acts every week. The show was a great introduction to who the Muppets were and kind of like who they were as characters, as the show gave Henson and his team the opportunity to really develop the personalities of each Muppet and allowed for audiences to kind of feel emotionally connected to what the Muppets were going through and what their stories were. So we learn all about Miss Piggy and how she wants to be famous and how she's in love with Kermit and Kermit kind of doesn't give a shit about her. You know, Gonzo's a wannabe stunt guy and he really sucks. Fozzie Bear is also a terrible comedian. We also learn that the Muppets are just a really weird group of friends trying to make it in Hollywood. And, you know, to their credit, they actually do make it in Hollywood. Because in 1979, the Muppet movie comes out.
Get ready to discover
I'm on my way to Hollywood.
Hollywood?
Hollywood?
how the Muppets first got together.
Why are you hopping up and down? Because I'm hopping mad. We picked up a weirdo.
And from then on until Jim Henson's death, they released many more critically acclaimed TV specials and movies. Props to the Muppets, like, they wanted to make it in Hollywood. They did that shit. By this point, Jim Henson and the Muppets were global superstars, and it started to get a lot to handle. As a business, the Muppets were making a lot of money for Henson Studios, but at his core, Jim Henson was a creative and not a businessman. So he began searching for a home for the Muppets where the business side of things could be dealt with, and he could focus more on his creative pursuits. Here enters Disney, and like Disney always does, they really were desperate to get their hands on, you know, the Muppet franchise, because Disney wants to get their hands on every single franchise that has ever existed and own every IP, but that's besides the point. In the late 1980s, Jim Henson began talks with Disney because he saw it as a way to be able to free up his time and focus on the creative, fun aspects of the Muppets, while Disney would be able to provide all the funding and help expand the Muppets into a more global audience. And to be fair, this was also a great opportunity for Disney, as they were actively looking at the time to expand their theme parks. And, you know, given the popularity of the Muppets, they jumped at this opportunity. Totally makes sense, but, you know, I kind of have it out for the fact that Disney just owns literally every IP that has ever existed. But whatever. Beginning in August of 1989, the Disney Company and Jim Henson Studios began working on a new theme park attraction for Disney's Hollywood Studios called Jim Henson's Muppet Vision 3D. This ride uses 3D film technology and 4D in-theater effects such as Muppet animatronics, soap bubbles, lighting, projection effects, and smoke. And, you know, as far as theme park attractions go, I know I'm biased, but this is literally one of the best that has ever been created. The lineup for the ride was designed to make you feel like you had actually entered Muppet Labs. It was a big warehouse-looking space with TVs everywhere, and like many Disney rides, also featured a pre-show. In this specific pre-show, we see the Muppets preparing for the show we are supposedly about to see. Scooter, the stage manager Muppet, is trying to deal with a bunch of technical difficulties and also just trying to manage all the Muppets who keep interrupting him. It's super classic Muppet stuff. You know, they're trying to make a show and everything goes wrong. Until finally a stampede of Muppets rush into the theater and lead the audience inside to start the show. The main portion of this attraction takes place in a classic-looking theater, and we're greeted on screen by Kermit the Frog, welcoming the audience to Muppet Vision 3D.
Hi ho, Kermit the Frog here, and welcome to Muppet Vision 3D.
Oh, and here's something I wanted to spring on you.
On one side of the theater, we also have some animatronics of Waldorf and Statler who are heckling throughout the show. Kermit gives us a tour of Muppet Studios, and we see all the Muppets preparing for their segments. He takes us into Muppet Labs, where we see Honeydew's latest creation, a 3D character called Waldo C. Graphic. I bet you can guess where this is going, because everything obviously goes to shit. Waldo ends up destroying the Muppet Lab, and as the Muppets are trying to perform their parts of the show, Waldo flies around and causes chaos. During these bits, we also get a ton of fun in-theater 4D effects, like water getting sprayed at us, and also bubbles flying everywhere during Miss Piggy's song. And then finally, at the very end of the show, we have Sweetums, the big ogre-looking Muppet, bursts through a hole in the wall and claims he was trying to save the show, you know, which is funny to us, because obviously he's way too late. Like, the show's over. Yeah, that's, like, quite a bare bones plot, but that's essentially just like what Muppet Vision 3D is. This wouldn't be a Muppet Vision 3D video without at least touching on California's Muppet Vision 3D. On February 8th, 2001, Muppet Vision 3D opened in Disneyland's California Adventure Park, almost 10 years after the Disney World version opened.
Ladies and gentlemen, Disney's California Adventure is proud to present the Hollywood Pictures backlot premiere of our most sensational, inspirational, Muppetational attraction, Jim Henson's Muppet Vision 3D.
There's really not too much to say about this version of the attraction. It was essentially just the exact same as what Disney World had, and it really didn't last that long in comparison. Disney announced in 2014 that they were going to temporarily close the attraction, and then in May 2015 they were actually like, nah, never mind, we actually just won't ever be opening this ever again, actually. And thus, that was the end of Disneyland's Muppet Vision 3D ride. This one in particular kind of makes me really sad, because even though there wasn't anything different about this version of the ride, it wasn't overly exciting. It is just weird that Disney made a promise that the ride closure was only going to be temporary, and then they just removed it altogether without any warning. Yeah, so that's Disneyland California's Muppet Vision 3D, I guess. So, after all of that, you may still be wondering what exactly the historical significance of this attraction even is. You know, because I literally said that there was historical significance at the beginning of this video. The reason Muppet Vision 3D is so significant is because it was not only Jim Henson's last project he did with the Muppets before he passed away, but it also kind of marked the end of an era for the Muppets as a franchise. After Disney fully bought the rights to the Muppets, they kind of lived in limbo for many years. Always seems like Disney was pretty confused about what to even do with the franchise. Of course, many, many years later, in 2011, we get a new Muppet movie, which was great, and I love it so much, and it was critically acclaimed, and it was funny, and it was just kind of everything. But the classic Muppets that, you know, we grew to love over the years just didn't really exist for such a long time. Even with the 2011 movie, it just, like, was different. I mean, the entire thing was that they were kind of reinventing the Muppets. And then, you know, a couple years after that, they released The Muppets Most Wanted, which was also fun, but less critically acclaimed. And now they're just kind of living in limbo again. It really seemed like with the death of Jim Henson and the opening of Muppet Vision 3D, it was kind of just the end of the classic Muppet era. And, you know, now that Muppet Vision 3D is dead, that's that. You know, it was the last time Jim Henson played the character Kermit. You know, we're never gonna see that again. It is pretty sad, you know, if you're a fan of the history surrounding it. So what even comes next after this? After they announced the closure of Muppet Vision 3D, Disney promised that they'd archive the film for historical purposes, and more excitedly, they also announced that they'd be turning the Aerosmith Rock and Roller Coaster, which is also located in Disney's Hollywood Studios, into a Muppet-themed Electric Mayhem roller coaster, set to open sometime in 2026. So sorry to all the Aerosmith fans out there, but it doesn't look like Disney has any plans to relocate them into any different attraction. Other than that, there's also been some rumors floating around that Disney is planning on turning the Muppet Vision 3D film into virtual reality. But all I can actually find about that when I was trying to confirm this is that Disney is discussing it, so that could really mean anything. In conclusion, Muppet Vision 3D is dead. We're getting a new roller coaster. I mean, that's that. I am really excited actually about this Muppet Mayhem roller coaster. I think it's a really good idea. And it's kind of weird that we've even had a Aerosmith themed roller coaster at Hollywood Studios for as long as we have. So it just kind of makes sense, you know, transitioning into it. It is just really sad given the significance of Muppet Vision 3D that, you know, it's completely gone. But you know, it is what it is. It's a theme park attraction. They're not meant to, you know, live forever. So anyway, yeah, thank you for watching. I hope this was interesting for you to watch. If you got this far, thank you so much. Make sure to subscribe. I have like 20 subscribers right now. So yeah, it'd be much appreciated. And yeah, thanks for watching. I will be back sometime soon.